Hello everyone and welcome back to Military Breaking Point. I'm Jax Reed. In today's video, we'll take a closer look at the latest military and geopolitical developments, break down the facts, and explain what they could mean on the battlefield and beyond. Fact-based analysis and want to stay updated on global defense news, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now let's get into today's update. Germany has taken another major step in supporting Ukraine. Defense giant Rheinmetall has delivered the first batch of newly produced 155mm artillery ammunition from its new factory in Unterlüß, Lower Saxony. According to the company, this is the first delivery from the newly established production facility, with the remaining shells scheduled to be delivered by the end of 2026. The factory was built to significantly increase Europe's ammunition production in response to the ongoing war in Ukraine and growing demand for NATO standard artillery rounds. The 155mm shell is the standard ammunition used by many Western artillery systems supplied to Ukraine, including the Panzerhaubitze 2000, Caesar, and other self-propelled howitzers. Increasing production is expected to strengthen Ukraine's long-term ability to sustain artillery operations. The delivery underscores Germany's continued military support for Ukraine and highlights Rheinmetall's expanding role in supplying critical defense equipment as the conflict continues. Flamingos have once again returned to Ukraine's Tuzly Lagoons National Park in the Odessa region, attempting to nest despite the ongoing war. Their return is being closely watched by conservationists, who see it as an encouraging sign of nature's resilience. In recent years, nesting attempts have been repeatedly disrupted by the conflict, including explosions, military activity, and disturbances that forced many birds to abandon their breeding grounds. Flamingos are highly sensitive during the nesting season, and even limited disturbances can reduce breeding success. This year, however, conservation teams are cautiously optimistic. If the birds can remain undisturbed long enough to hatch and raise their chicks, it would represent an important milestone for the recovery of the local ecosystem. While the war continues to reshape the region, the return of these flamingos serves as a reminder that wildlife is also fighting to survive, making every successful nest a small but meaningful victory for nature. Kherson is facing an unprecedented wave of drone attacks, with small explosive-carrying drones posing a constant threat to civilians across the city. According to local reports, a man walking along a street was struck by a drone during the night, highlighting the growing danger to anyone moving outdoors. Residents say these attacks are becoming increasingly frequent, with drones reportedly targeting vehicles, pedestrians, and other visible movement. The streets are also becoming littered with fiber optic cables used by some drones for secure guidance, allowing operators to maintain control while reducing vulnerability to electronic jamming. This technology has made certain drone operations more difficult to disrupt. The situation reflects the evolving nature of modern warfare, where low-cost drones are increasingly being used close to the front line and in contested urban areas. For civilians in Kherson, daily life now involves the constant risk of aerial surveillance and sudden attack. Ukraine's reported strike on the Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat complex could have implications that extend well beyond the immediate damage. According to Reuters, the facility has halted oil and gas condensate processing after the attack, with both primary processing units and part of the secondary processing equipment reportedly damaged. Initial assessments suggest that restoring full operations could take anywhere from several weeks to several months. To understand why this matters, it's important to look at the scale of the facility. Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat is one of Russia's largest integrated oil refining and petrochemical complexes. In 2024, it processed approximately 7.2 million metric tons of crude oil, accounting for around 2.7% of Russia's total oil refining capacity. Besides producing fuels such as gasoline and diesel, the complex also manufactures petrochemical products used in plastics, chemicals, and industrial manufacturing. The reported damage to the primary processing units is particularly significant. These units are the starting point of the refining process, where crude oil is separated into different fractions. If these systems are offline, most downstream refining operations cannot function, regardless of whether other equipment remains intact. Damage to secondary processing units further limits the refinery's ability to produce high-value fuels and petrochemical products. From Ukraine's perspective, these strikes fit a broader strategy of targeting Russia's energy infrastructure. Rather than focusing solely on military bases, Ukraine has increasingly attempted to reduce Russia's industrial capacity by striking refineries, fuel storage sites, and logistics hubs. The objective is to complicate fuel production and increase the economic costs associated with sustaining military operations. However, it's also important to keep the impact in perspective. While 2.7% of national refining capacity is substantial for a single facility, Russia operates numerous refineries across the country. Unless multiple major facilities remain offline simultaneously, Russia is generally able to redistribute crude oil to other plants and continue meeting much of its domestic fuel demand. The immediate effect is therefore likely to be regional production disruptions rather than a nationwide fuel shortage. Another factor is repair time. Refining equipment is highly specialized, and replacing damaged processing units can be complex. Sanctions and restrictions on importing advanced industrial components may also complicate repairs, depending on the extent of the damage. If replacement parts are difficult to obtain, outages could last longer than initially expected. Overall, if Reuters' reporting and the damage assessments are confirmed, this strike represents another example of Ukraine's campaign against Russia's energy sector. While it is unlikely to cripple Russia's refining industry on its own, taking a major refinery temporarily offline increases operational pressure, creates economic costs, and forces Russia to devote additional resources to protecting and restoring critical energy infrastructure. The longer such disruptions persist, and the more frequently they occur, the greater their cumulative impact on Russia's industrial and logistical capabilities. The Kremlin's latest information campaign illustrates a familiar pattern in modern information warfare, combining unverified claims, selective reporting, and misleading narratives to shape public perception. The claim being circulated is that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy allegedly suffered a hysterical breakdown after Russia supposedly captured Kostyantynivka and intensified attacks on Ukraine's rear areas. According to the narrative promoted by Russian state television presenter Dmitry Kiselyov, Zelenskyy allegedly required medical attention. However, there is no credible evidence supporting this claim. No Ukrainian government agency, presidential office, major Ukrainian news outlet, or internationally recognized media organization has reported such an incident. The story appears to originate from Russian Telegram channels and pro-Kremlin military bloggers, which cited anonymous and unverifiable sources. Anonymous claims without supporting evidence cannot be independently verified and do not meet the standards of reliable reporting. To reinforce the narrative, Russian state media referenced the Italian website Diplomatico. However, the publication has previously been identified by several independent disinformation researchers and fact-checking organizations as a platform that has repeatedly promoted pro-Kremlin narratives. Over the past several years, it has published disputed or debunked claims regarding events such as Bucha, alleged U.S. biological laboratories in Ukraine, and other narratives that have been rejected by multiple independent investigations. Another key element of this information campaign is the assertion that Russia has already captured Kostyantynivka. Current battlefield assessments do not support that claim. While Russian forces continue offensive operations around the city and fighting remains intense, there is no credible confirmation that the city has fallen under full Russian control. Ukrainian forces continue to defend positions in and around Kostyantynivka, and the situation remains contested. Military analysts generally distinguish between ongoing combat near a city and confirmed control of that city. As of now, the available evidence indicates that fighting continues rather than confirming a complete Russian capture. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also publicly responded to the claim with sarcasm, suggesting that if Russia truly controlled Kostyantynivka, President Vladimir Putin could simply travel there to meet him. His response was intended to challenge what Ukraine describes as an exaggerated or false Russian narrative regarding battlefield progress. From an analytical perspective, this type of messaging serves several objectives. First, it attempts to portray Ukraine's political leadership as unstable or losing confidence. Second, it seeks to reinforce the perception among Russian domestic audiences that military operations are achieving decisive victories. Third, it aims to influence international audiences by creating uncertainty about the actual situation on the battlefield and reducing confidence in Ukrainian leadership. Information operations have become a central component of the Russia-Ukraine war. Alongside missiles, drones, and artillery, both sides compete to shape public opinion through media narratives, official statements, and social media campaigns. Because of this, analysts generally rely on multiple independent sources, including satellite imagery, verified battlefield reporting, official military statements, and reputable international journalism, before accepting extraordinary claims. In this case, there is currently no independently verified evidence supporting the allegation that President Zelenskyy suffered a medical or psychological breakdown. Likewise, there is no independent confirmation that Kostyantynivka has been fully captured by Russian forces. Until credible evidence emerges, these claims should be treated as unverified information rather than established fact. The European Union is significantly expanding its sanctions campaign against Russia, announcing one of its largest packages of restrictive measures since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. According to EU officials, the latest measures, combined with the upcoming 21st sanctions package, will add approximately 250 individuals and entities to the bloc's sanctions list. This marks the largest round of individual designations introduced by the European Union since the beginning of the war. A major focus of the package is Russia's financial and industrial infrastructure. EU leaders say the objective is to weaken the economic foundations that support Russia's military operations. The sanctions are expected to target companies, financial networks, intermediaries, and individuals accused of contributing to Russia's defense industry, sanctions evasion, or military procurement. Another notable element is what the European Union describes as its largest-ever cyber sanctions package. These measures are aimed at individuals and organizations allegedly involved in cyber attacks, cyber espionage, and digital operations considered harmful to European security and institutions. In recent years, cybersecurity has become an increasingly important part of the conflict, with cyber operations accompanying military and political developments. From an analytical perspective, sanctions are designed to increase economic and technological pressure over time rather than produce immediate battlefield effects. By restricting access to financing, advanced technology, industrial components, and international markets, the EU hopes to raise the long-term cost of sustaining Russia's military and defense production. However, the overall effectiveness of sanctions remains the subject of ongoing debate. While Western restrictions have complicated Russia's access to certain technologies and financial systems, Russia has also sought alternative trade routes and expanded economic cooperation with non-Western partners to reduce the impact of these measures. Even so, each new sanctions package increases compliance requirements for banks, exporters, insurers, and businesses worldwide, making sanctions evasion more difficult and placing additional pressure on Russia's wartime economy. The announcement demonstrates that the European Union continues to rely on economic pressure, alongside military assistance to Ukraine, as one of its primary tools for influencing the course of the conflict. That's all for today's update. Thank you for watching Military Breaking Point. If you found this analysis informative, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest military and geopolitical updates. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. I'm Jax Reed. Stay informed, stay critical, and I'll see you in the next briefing.